Hey, I am recording a quick demo for Nick. He wanted to learn how to do some kind of selective distortion of type, and I'm going to kind of overlap on some of the techniques I showed for the demo for Kara that involved kind of creating that like ocean wavy rippling type. So I'm going to use some similar techniques here, but I'm going to do some like selective masking, and that's kind of a different technique that I think can be pretty useful here. So. You can see what I've done is I built this quick little type configuration in Illustrator and then just kind of copied it and pasted it over. So that's all I've done in terms of the file setup. The other thing to note is I did duplicate this file. Anytime you're going to do something that is like permanently destructive to a layer where you're going to permanently alter it, I usually recommend going ahead and duplicating that layer so you have one version of the artwork that's flat and safe and unaltered, so that you can always go back and revert to that. The other thing that I think is going to be handy here is if we have that layer duplicated, we can do some masking. Um, so anyway, I'll show what all of that looks like. So with one of these layers selected, I'm going to just have the other one hidden. I'm going to go over to what's called the quick mask. Quick mask, as the name implies, allows you to kind of quickly select certain parts of an image. So what I'm going to do is with that selected, I'm now going to click on my gradient tool. This gradient is just fading from black to white. The quick mask only works in grayscale, so it only works in black and white. So what I'm doing here is creating just a quick little gradient, and if I now click off of the quick mask, you can see that what I've done is I've actually selected just the lower portion of this layout here. If I go back to quick mask, what you'll see is that anything that's white will end up being selected, and anything that is black, even though it's previewing as pink here, anything that's black will remain unselected. So because I created a gradient, what's going to happen here is my selection is actually kind of a gradiated selection. So again, I'll be out of the quick mask. It won't preview as though the selection has a gradient, but you'll see that whenever I start applying filters to this, the filters will apply kind of unevenly based on the gradient that I have here. So if I go up to filter and click on Gaussian blur, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to exaggerate this for a second, and you'll see that on the bottom, the blur is affecting the image in a major way, and then as it kind of moves upward, it's blurring less and less and less. So you can use this kind of gradient selection in order to kind of fade an effect. So yeah, it impacts part of the image a lot, and then it doesn't impact the other image, and there's kind of a nice transition between those two areas. So if I drop this number a little bit lower, the effect that Nick's going for is to make the type feel a little bit drunken and a little bit blurry. So I'm just going to add a little bit of blur, but nothing too dramatic, because I want the type to still be readable. I just want it to be a touch unfocused. So I'm going to do 5.5 pixels. That seems to be working. So I'm going to just unselect that just for a moment, and I'll remake that selection. But just to kind of preview so we can see what's happening here. So you can see that part of the image is quite blurry, and then it fades, gets progressively less blurry until it transitions into up here where it's completely in focus. So so that little kind of gradient selection is a really nice trick that I've kind of I'm sure I'm not the only one to figure that out, but it's just something I've kind of made up one time, and I find it comes in really handy. Okay, so I'm going to, in my history, I'm just going to click back once so that I'm no longer deselecting that selection, so I still have that same gradient selection made. And then after I've blurred this, I'm going to go back up to filter. I'm going to go to distort. I'm going to use wave, and we could probably use any combination of different filters, but I think based on what Nick's kind of going for, I do think the wave filter will work pretty well. These settings are actually still left over from the demo I did for Kara, and I think they're actually going to still come in handy. So the main thing to note is that I've dropped the vertical scale as low as possible, because if I have the vertical, you can see in this little preview, if I have the vertical selected, then it there's both like horizontal manipulation and vertical manipulation, and I think it makes it look just a little bit probably too destructive. So I'll go ahead and click OK just so we can preview what that looks like. And you can see there's like vertical up and down waving as well as side to side waving, which I think we don't want in this instance, but you can certainly play with the effects and kind of edit them however you like. So I'll go back to distort and then wave. I'm just going to drop that vertical number back pretty low. The horizontal number, play around with it, kind of see what you think. Same with the amplitude and wavelength. Play and just see what you think. Number of generators, if you add a lot, it's going to make things really kind of chaotic. So again, you can kind of fine tune that to whatever amount you would like. So if our goal is for this bottom part to still be readable, which I think we want it to be, I can make these effects somewhat subtle. And the nice thing again about that gradient selection is you can see that it's warping the bottom pretty significantly, but then it gets progressively less warped until it transitions nicely and smoothly into a perfectly clean focus type. So that I think will give kind of the bulk of the effects. As long as you have that gradient selection made, you can continue to manipulate this type however you want. So you can add, you can go up to filter gallery, you can add all kinds of other interesting effects that, not that you want to add stained glass, but conceivably you could. So you can add whatever other amount of effects you want, and those will just be applied selectively. So I think that's good. If, however, you were to make global changes to this where, just for the sake of demonstration, I'll kind of wave this whole thing. So now I've waved the entire layout quite a bit. Because I've duplicated this original layer, I can always go here and then apply a mask to this, and then paint over, just mask out parts of this, so to where this is another option that you can even use. Sorry, my opacity is turned down too low. Where by masking out the bottom of this, you can then kind of transition from the layer that is completely altered up to the layer that is unaltered. There's going to be some alignment issues that you'll have to kind of sort out, so this may not be the best technique, but I still want to kind of mention that if you have one layer that remains fully intact and unedited, you can always use it to and create a mask to transition from your unedited layer down to your edited layer. So that might be helpful as well.